That down. Let's move on and talk about this, shall we? You know, Daredevil Born Again is out last night, episode 4. I think it was the best episode of the season so far. I absolutely loved it. We did our post-game show on it last night. Make sure you guys join me on Tuesday nights when we do post-game shows for new episodes of Daredevil. Next week, bang, bang, double episode. We're getting 2 episodes dropped next week, 5 and 6. Keep your eyes open. And of course, Jon Bernthal made his appearance as Punisher last night in a scene that I'm not going to say exceeds, but rivals the Daredevil season 2 rooftop scene between Matt and Bernthal. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Now, we also know about Daredevil Born Again that when they originally made the show, it was A, not going to be connected to the Netflix series, and B, was going to be quite different. At some point, they pulled the whole plug on it, went back to the drawing board and redid it. But according to a new interview with Jon Bernthal opted out of being in the original Daredevil Born Again iteration because they weren't treating Frank like the gritty, violent dude that Jon Bernthal interprets him to be. This comes to us from the folks at Screen Rant. The interview, I believe, was with Entertainment Weekly, who said this: Bernthal, ultimately, I didn't see it. I didn't see the version of Frank that they wanted from Frank. Didn't really make sense to me, and I thought would not appeal to the fans and wouldn't be congruent. It was not something I was really interested in doing, so we had to walk away. So apparently, he wasn't going to be in there, because when he sat down and looked at the way they were managing the character in that original iteration, they said, I don't think this is true to the character. And they said, I'm going to opt not to be in it. Now, clearly, once they went back and they made the decision to connect it now to the original Netflix series and make it as a part and bring that whole thing into the MCU and blah, blah, they went back to the drawing board, also redid the Frank character. By the way, brought in the showrunner of the Punisher series to be the showrunner for this. And clearly he liked this version of Frank a lot more. And then we got that insanely great episode last night. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, BetterHelp. Listen, guys, you know if you've been listening to me for any amount of time that I really believe that we need to start prioritizing our mental health. I often compare it to this. You know, when we go to the gym to get ourselves more physically healthy, we see that as a positive step. We need to start looking at our mental health the same way and prioritizing our mental health. And that's where BetterHelp comes through. Therapy should feel accessible, not a luxury just for people who have lots of money. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. If you want to look at the numbers, traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up fast. But with BetterHelp online therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/Campea today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Campea. Rob, when you look at this, I mean, the reality is we're not even seeing Frank until episode 4. We're practically halfway through the show. So it's not like it was going to be a major influence, but how significant do you think it was that they were able to get Jon Bernthal on board for this iteration of Born Again?
Well, I think it's really significant. I mean, you know, even when actors, to go back to Star Trek V, I can't believe I'm going to reference that again, but no, in Star Trek Generations, Leonard Nimoy was asked to appear in that movie, and he said, look, you have nothing for Spock to do in this script, so I decline. And I think the same is true, you know, the Punisher character is a very distinct, very out front character that has a philosophy and a certain way of being. I mean, you know, you hear the stories about when Bernthal went to comic book stores, you know, and he got the part, and the comic book guy is like, no, you got to read this, and don't mess it up. You know, he understands how important this character is to people and how important it became to him playing the character. And if he's given something that he thinks diminishes his involvement, he's the kind of guy that's going to be like, I'm not going to do this, you know. And I can imagine they went back to him. Can you imagine? You've already said, no, I'm not going to come back. And then they come back to him with last night's scene.
Oh,
you know, and as an actor, you read that part and you're like, this I can sink my teeth into.
So good.
And then the whole idea that people are emulating the Punisher I mean, that immediately gives his overarching story in this season of Daredevil something that really has resonance, because the people that have taken up the mantle of the Punisher, like so many others in, I don't know, the real world, are misconstruing what he stands for and why he is who he is. And that's something an actor longs to do. They long to have a part that can resonate in this way. And that guy brought his A game last night, and you can see he was in. And that's what we get as the audience. That's what we want. And we got it.
By the way, I mentioned on my post-game show last night, and I had the night to think about it, but I'm going to stand by this. That scene, I'm not going to say is better than the Netflix series. I'm not saying that, but that scene was the single best performance Charlie Cox has given us as Matt Murdock, I think, of all the Daredevil seasons. That includes the Netflix one. As Frank, and without dialogue, as Frank was like going at him, say his name, you could just see Matt's face start to break down, even with the glasses on.
Yeah.
You could see him. I think it was the finest performance Charlie Cox has given so far. And anyway, Chris, let's get over to you. You saw Jon Bernthal's interview. It's hard to say how huge of a difference it would make since he only shows up in episode 4. But how significant do you think it is that with the reimagining of Born Again, they were able to get him on board for this?
I think it's huge too. I think it's a major thing, especially with him losing a core person in his life. I don't know. I mean, I know that was several episodes ago, but I don't want to spoil anything in case people haven't seen stuff. I think it's so important that Matt can have this foil to himself and have this discussion, because his typical moral compasses are nowhere to be found this season. And so I think having Frank, who gives in to these violent urges, who validates himself, who hears his son telling him, yeah, Dad, go get him.
Go get him. Get them all.
Get them all. I feel like this was such an important discussion for Matt with everything he's grappling. Now, obviously, vigilante justice is not great in the real world, but it was such a wonderful moment between the two of just fighting who they truly are and who they want to be. And I feel like this is the whole just like crux of who Matt Murdock, who Daredevil is as well. We don't need him to be in a church to see that he grapples with guilt.
Yeah.
He can be anywhere, and that's always just with him. And to have Frank him call him out and to talk about how he is not of service, how he is not doing what he should be doing, was a really poignant scene and so powerful. And Jon Bernthal just delivers. He's such a tremendous actor. He's so gifted. And I think a lesser actor would not have been able to handle that monologue with the just intensity and the pure raw emotion that he was able to bring to this and bring out of Charlie Cox as well.
It's also neat seeing that life has not been good for Frank
No.
in the last 6 years. How do you think things have been going? Like it was like, so that's pretty, you know what was also interesting? The fact that Matt has known where Frank has been this whole time. I really hope they explore that more. Like, Matt has always kept tabs on where Frank is, only now decided to approach him.
Did he get snapped? Do you think he disappeared in the end? Thanos snapped? Did the Punisher go?
Ooh, maybe.
That, you know, it's never been addressed, never been touched.
Nope.
That's interesting. I do think this was a really great example, too, of how less is more in your writing. We didn't need to know Frank's backstory or what's been going on for the past few years. All we needed was how does it look like it's going? And we know.
Yeah.
We just
that
know.
was the
Like
best
it's been
thing
going.
ever.
All right, guys. Question is for you. What do you think about this? I mean, we ultimately don't really know how that first iteration of Born Again was going to go, but once they retooled it, decided to connect it to the old Netflix series and stuff like that, how significant of a move do you think it was that they got Jon Bernthal back on board? I mean, we've only had a very, very small sample size, but that was the best scene of the season so far, in the best episode of the season so far. However you guys feel about it, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.